That call changed everything. 18 years. 18 years of commitment, of missed dinners, late flights, and weekends lost to deadlines. I was not just an employee. I was part of the foundation. When something broke, I fixed it. When something needed building, I built it. I thought that meant something. My name is Raymond Ellis, and for nearly 2 decades, I gave everything I had to a company that, in the end, did not even give me a conversation before replacing me with someone who had not even earned the chair he was handed. It was a Thursday. I remember because I had just gotten out of a strategy call with one of our European partners. We had made real progress on a logistics bottleneck that had been bleeding us for months. I closed my laptop feeling satisfied. Tired, but satisfied. Then, the phone rang. It was not from anyone I usually heard from, a restricted number. At first I thought it might be a sales call. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something in me, I do not know. Curiosity maybe, or instinct. So I answered. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. It was one of the board members, someone I had spoken with only a handful of times over the years. Not out of any issue. We just operated in different spheres. I was operations, ground-level strategy. He was governance, oversight. From a distance, he did not waste time. I wanted you to hear it from me, he said. The board has voted to move forward with a new chief operating officer. I remember just going quiet. I did not interrupt him. I did not ask why. I just sat there, holding the phone to my ear, listening as the man explained how they were realigning leadership and refocusing for the future. Words that had clearly been chosen by a committee. I finally asked who they were bringing in. That was the part he hesitated on. It will be temporary, he said, which of course was not true. The CEO's son-in-law will be stepping in, given his experience in... I stopped listening after that. Experience. That was the word they used. The man had been in the company for less than 3 years. He had no operational background, no crisis management under his belt. His career before this? Marketing at a mid-sized consumer goods firm. His biggest accomplishment there was rebranding, a breakfast cereal. And now he was going to run operations for a company with global supply chains, international compliance protocols, and over 4,000 employees depending on the decisions made in that role. I remember saying, "So that is it?" And the board member said, "It is not personal, Ray. It is just business." That line, "It is just business." That was the moment something in me shifted, because I had always made it personal. Not in a dramatic or emotional way, but I had cared. I had shown up when no one else did. I had put in the hours, the thought, the sweat. I had turned down other offers, walked away from headhunters, because I believed in the mission. I believed in the people. I believed they would remember that, but they didn't. They remembered the CEO's connections. They remembered who he played golf with on Saturdays. They remembered who he had dinner with during the board retreats in Aspen, and they gave the job to someone who had never even been through a vendor audit. I was not escorted out, at least. They gave me a severance package, signed under the pretense of gratitude. I signed it without ceremony. I did not want to drag it out. I boxed up my office quietly. No dramatic emails, no goodbye speech in the cafeteria. Just me and a cardboard box, walking out of a building I had practically lived in for half my life. Most people did not even know yet. It would be announced the following week, wrapped in some glossy email about evolving leadership and strategic renewal. But a few did know. One of them was Rachel, my second in command. She had been with the company almost as long as I had. Brilliant, capable. She came to my office as I was taping the last box shut. She looked at me and said, "You are really going?" I nodded, and she said, "Then I am not far behind." I told her not to make any decisions out of emotion. I did not want to be the reason anyone else risked their career, but the look in her eyes told me she was not just angry. She was disappointed. She saw what they were willing to do to someone who had built the entire operational architecture they were now standing on. But I was not going to fight it. Not then. Not yet. I needed time. Time to process what had happened, to understand the full picture. And truthfully, I needed space. I had been so embedded in that place, so consumed by its needs, that I had forgotten what life felt like outside of it. I spent the next few weeks mostly alone. I turned off my phone for days at a time. I ignored LinkedIn messages and just checking in emails. I walked, I read, I thought, and then one evening, about a month after I left, I got another phone call. This time, it was not a board member. It was a client, a major one. One we had worked with for over a decade. They were not calling to make small talk. They had heard about the change, and they were not happy. They told me what had happened since I left. Late shipments, miscommunication, missed compliance deadlines, confusion on the vendor side, no clear answers from the new leadership. Then came the line that changed everything again. "Ray, would you consider working with us directly?" I asked what they meant. "We are not interested in staying with the company as things stand, but we are not ready to start over with someone new either. You know our business better than anyone. We would rather build something with you." At first, I dismissed it. I had no infrastructure, no team, no capital. But they were serious. They offered funding, partial ownership, autonomy. They had other partners lined up, people who were also feeling the ripple effects of the leadership change. People who wanted out. It was not revenge I felt. It was clarity. For the first time in years, I was not operating under someone else's vision. I was not maintaining someone else's empire. I was being invited to build something from the ground up, not out of spite, but out of purpose. I told them I needed a week. Then I called Rachel. When I called Rachel, she picked up on the second ring. "Ray," she said, like she had been waiting for it. I did not know exactly what I was going to say until I said it. I told her about the client's call, their offer, the possibility they were putting on the table. I did not exaggerate. I just laid it out, exactly as it happened. There was a pause. Then she asked, "Are you going to do it?" "I'm thinking about it," I said. "But not alone." Rachel was silent again, but this time I could hear the gears turning. Then she said, "You know I'm in." I reminded her she still had a job, still had a paycheck. She had a team, a department. Walking away from all of that would not be easy, and I did not want her burning bridges over something that was not fully built yet. "I already sent my notice," she said. "Last week, after they gave your office to the new guy, and he asked me what an RFP was." That hit me harder than I expected. I did not know whether to laugh or shake my head. We talked for a while that night, longer than we had talked in months. Not about the company, not just about the offer. About what we wanted out of this next phase. What we were tired of. What we still believed in. There was something grounding about it. Familiar, but new. Over the next few days, I started getting more calls. 2 more clients reached out, quietly, off the record. Word had gotten around faster than I expected. Some of the vendors I used to work with reached out too. People I had built relationships with over years. People who trusted me not because of my title, but because I never lied to them. Never left them hanging, and never treated their time like it was disposable. The irony was, the more I distanced myself from the company, the more people reached in. They were not calling out of loyalty or nostalgia. They were frustrated. They had tried raising concerns internally and were getting slow responses, or worse, rehearsed corporate non-answers. One client put it simply, "We feel like we're dealing with interns and middlemen now." That was when I knew the cracks were deeper than I had realized. Still, I was cautious. I did not want to start something impulsively. I was not interested in revenge. I wanted to build something that could last, with real principles, real clarity, and without the politics that had strangled the last place from the inside. So I started laying the groundwork quietly. I contacted a lawyer I trusted, had her walk me through the steps of setting up a consultancy and eventually a new firm. We talked structure, liability, growth models. I did not want a flashy launch. I wanted resilience. Rachel and I started sketching what the first 6 months might look like. We made lists, potential clients, trusted vendors, logistics. We mapped out operations in a shared folder. We kept our conversations tight, secure. Nothing on company emails, no leaks, no drama. A few other former colleagues reached out during that time. Some had already left. Others were quietly updating resumes, testing the waters. One of them, an analyst I had worked with for years, told me the new guy had tried implementing a KPI system lifted straight out of a consumer startup handbook, and it had backfired within 2 weeks. He doesn't understand throughput, the analyst told me. He doesn't even pretend to. He keeps talking about market vibes. Meanwhile, the client who first called me followed up. "We're ready when you are," he said. "We'll wait a little while, but not forever. If you want to move, this is the window." I took a breath before answering. Then I said, "Give me 3 weeks." That was the start of it. In that time I registered the new entity. Nothing dramatic, just a clean, sharp name. No ego, no legacy branding. Just a name that meant what we did, clearly. We brought in a freelance designer to set up a basic visual identity. Nothing fancy but professional. Trustworthy. Serious. I asked a friend to set up a secure server, custom emails, proper firewalls. This was not a side project. It had to be airtight from day one. I started contacting the clients I had built over the years, not to poach, but to let them know was available if they ever needed support outside of the company's new direction. I was careful, respectful, but honest. Some did not even hesitate. By the end of week 2, we had 6 letters of intent. By the end of week 3, we had enough to run lean for a year. No loans, no outside investors, just clean commitments and a tight scope. Rachel came on board formally the next day. We worked out of a co-working space downtown, just a small room with 2 desks and a whiteboard. But for the first time in years, I felt clear. I was not waiting for approvals from 7 layers up. I was not defending budgets to people who had never seen a loading dock in their life. I was not sitting in conference rooms with someone's relative, nodding at a spreadsheet like it was written in a foreign language. I was building, and for the first time in a long time, I remembered why I started in this business in the first place. Not to climb titles, not to network at galas, but to fix real problems. To build systems that actually worked. To be useful. Still, I did not talk much about what had happened publicly. Let the new COO have his moment. Let them figure it out. But something was brewing behind the scenes. I had not even launched a public website yet, but somehow my old company's legal team found out about us. I got a letter, soft in tone, but unmistakable in intent. A reminder of my non-compete, even though it had been reviewed and heavily limited in scope when I signed my severance. It was a signal. They were worried because we were not just an idea anymore. We were moving, and we were doing it with people who had chosen to come to us, not out of resentment, but out of trust. And when trust is broken at the top, it trickles down fast. We were not trying to burn anything down. But we were not going to sit quietly either. Not anymore. The first month passed like a blur. We started small, no marketing, no loud announcements. Just work, real work. Clients were coming in with problems we knew how to solve. And we did. Quietly, effectively. We focused on deliverables, not meetings. On clarity, not theater. Rachel handled operations while I took on strategy and client relationships. We moved faster than we ever could back at the company. There was no waiting on executive sign-off, no navigating egos in the boardroom, just results. By the middle of the second month, we had delivered 2 complete overhauls for 2 mid-size clients, both of whom had been long-time accounts at the old firm. We did not poach. We did not sell. They came to us. One of them, a logistics network, emailed me after we wrapped up our second project with them. 4 lines. Fastest rollout we've ever had. No nonsense. Feels like we're back in control. That meant more than any quarterly bonus I had ever been handed. We were not just reacting anymore. We were building momentum, carefully but steadily. And then, the first real sign that the old company was feeling the pressure came in through a third party. A vendor I used to work with forwarded me an internal memo he had been copied on by mistake. It was not directed at me, but it was obvious who they were talking about. It said, "Former personnel are actively operating in overlapping spaces. Be cautious with information sharing. All vendor interactions must be cleared through legal or the executive assistant's office." They were trying to contain a leak that did not exist. We were not stealing anything. But what they failed to realize, what they never understood, is that people do not leave because someone offers more money. They leave because trust evaporates. Because they are treated like liabilities instead of assets. And when someone they trust starts something built on clarity, competence, and accountability, they follow. They do not need convincing. They just need the option. One of our early hires was not someone I ever imagined working with outside of a corporate structure. She had spent most of her career climbing quietly, handling compliance, policy implementation. Extremely sharp, extremely process-driven. She reached out with a short message. "I heard what you're building. I'm interested." When we spoke, she told me she had lasted 3 weeks under the new COO. He asked me to summarize our policy handbook in 5 slides. He said people do not care about nuance anymore. She left the next day. We brought her in to help formalize internal structure, workflows, onboarding, vendor policy. She had it done in 10 days, efficient, precise. What we were building was not about speed. It was about precision without the drag. And then something else happened. A former client, someone we had not spoken to in over a year, reached out unexpectedly. He had worked with us on a complicated systems rebuild a while back, and we had helped pull him out of a mess caused by a rushed software switch his last vendor pushed through. Now he was at a new company, bigger budget, bigger reach. He wanted us to bid on a contract for an overhaul that would take about 6 months. Infrastructure, operations, analytics. He said the only reason he had not reached out sooner was because he assumed I was still trapped in that glass-walled cage they kept you in. Those were his exact words. We submitted a bid the next day. 3 weeks later, it was awarded. And then, like clockwork, the old company reached out. This time, not through legal, not indirectly. Straight to me. The email came from someone I had worked with in procurement years ago, someone who had always been straightforward. The message was polite, but the subtext was not subtle. "We're hearing from clients that you're resurfacing. Just want to make sure we are not stepping on each other's toes." It was strange, seeing them pivot from confidence to caution, almost like they realized too late that this new setup they had propped up was not built to last. It did not have roots. It had connections, sure, but not the kind that hold when pressure builds. One morning I was grabbing coffee when I bumped into someone from my old department, a quiet analyst who had always kept his head down, but who knew more about the company's operations than half the directors. He looked around before speaking. "They've started holding Friday town halls." The CEO reads from notes. "Half the department's gone, morale's shot." I asked if he was okay. He shrugged. I'm getting by, but I'm watching. That was the theme of what came next. People were watching. Clients, vendors, employees, even competitors. Not out of curiosity, out of recognition. Because what we were doing was not revolutionary. It was familiar, but it was also disappearing. We were making something that used to be normal. Competence, responsiveness, stability. Feel rare again. And the company that pushed me out for someone with the right last name? They were reacting, not leading. They were not fixing anything, just patching holes. I heard through someone in operations that the COO had hired an external consulting group to do an audit of internal perception and cultural alignment. Translation. He wanted to know why no one trusted him, without admitting that the reason was himself. By the end of month 3, we had 12 clients and 6 full-time staff. We did not use titles. We did not have org charts. We just solved problems. Sounds romantic, I know, but it was not. It was work. Long hours, no shortcuts, every decision deliberate. But for the first time in nearly 2 decades, I was not performing for a boardroom. I was not putting on a show to justify my existence. I was doing the work I used to do before titles got in the way. And every call I got, from former colleagues, former clients, even one vendor I had not spoken to in 8 years, all said the same thing. It just feels different now. What they meant was, it feels real. And in this business, real is rare. But it is what people come back to, always. I got the message on a Thursday morning. It was simple, just one line. Would you be open to lunch? No agenda. It was from someone I had not heard from since the restructure. Someone who had sat beside me in those long strategy sessions, for years, back when people still listened before speaking. We had not spoken since the new regime swept in. He was not part of the decision to remove me, but he also was not the kind of man to push back when the tide changed. Back then, I saw it as silence. Now I saw it for what it really was. Survival. I agreed to meet. We chose a quiet spot just off the highway, not in the city, neutral ground. I arrived early. He walked in exactly on time, like he always did. No handshake, just a nod. We sat. He ordered coffee. Black. Same as always. I will get to the point, he said. They are spiraling. I let him talk. They lost 3 major accounts last quarter. 2 were clients you used to manage. 1 was legacy, and now it is just gone. They blame everyone but themselves. I listened. Measured, he continued. The CEO's son-in-law has no idea what he is doing. He is good at repeating jargon, but when it comes to actual decision-making, he freezes. The board is restless. The numbers are soft. Internal turnover is off the charts. Then he leaned forward like he was bracing for what he had to say next. They are trying to figure out if there is a way to bring you back. I let the silence sit. He kept going. They know you will not return under him. They know what they did. But the pressure is mounting. Shareholders are starting to ask questions. No one is saying it outright, but the undercurrent is clear. If things do not improve, the board will make changes. I watched him carefully. Why are you telling me this? He exhaled slowly. Because I think they are going to ask you. And I think you should say no. That caught me off guard, he clarified. They are not coming to you because they respect you. They are coming to you because they need to patch a sinking ship. They want to borrow your credibility without fixing the culture. He paused. And, if you say yes, they will wear you like a shield. Until it is convenient not to. That conversation stayed with me for days. Not because I was tempted, but because it reminded me of what I used to ignore, that most of the time people in power do not want solutions. They want insulation. Still, I knew something else. They would call, and they did. It came through a third-party consultant first, then a board liaison. Then finally, A direct call from the chair. They all tried the same angle. We have been reflecting. We want to recenter the original vision. This is an opportunity to build something stronger. They were carefully crafted statements, the kind that had passed through 3 legal reviews and a branding specialist. But what they wanted was obvious. They wanted me to return, clean up the mess quietly, prop up the new figurehead without making him look weak, and then step back into the background. They wanted credibility without accountability. I said no. Not with drama, not with bitterness. Just a simple, firm no. And I told them why. Because I have finally built something that works without politics. Because I am no longer afraid of starting from zero. And because going back would mean betraying the people who believed in what we built after everything fell apart. There was a long pause on the other end. Then the voice softened. If anything changes, we hope you will reconsider. But something had changed. Just not in the way they meant. We were in week 16 of our new operation, and we had just been offered our largest contract yet. A long-term advisory partnership with an international logistics firm that had outgrown its bloated internal operations. The proposal came with flexibility, autonomy, and, most importantly, trust. That was the currency I valued now. Every client we worked with knew exactly who they were dealing with. No smoke, no layers, just performance. And then something else shifted. 2 people from the old executive team, people I never imagined would leave. Both reached out within days of each other. One of them had once led the finance arm. Meticulous, careful, sometimes overly cautious. The other was pure operations, blunt, sharp, unsentimental. Both were done. The finance lead told me, "They built the house with dry wood. It was always going to burn." The operations lead was even more direct. "I spent 2 decades making sure things moved. Now all they do is decorate the mess." They were not looking for handouts. They were not even asking for jobs. They just wanted something real to be part of again. We found ways to work together, not with titles, not with bureaucracy, but with actual purpose. And then the real shift happened. One of our core clients, a mid-sized manufacturer with global distribution, asked if we would consider an embedded consulting model, not just project-based, not just advisory, full integration, operational authority. That meant building a second tier of leadership, infrastructure, legal compliance, HR systems, payroll. We had to grow, deliberately. It was a hard decision, because with growth comes complexity, and with complexity comes risk. But we did it, and we did it with care. We added no more than 2 people per month. Everyone came through referral. No open job boards, no third-party recruiters. Just people who understood what we were building. And every week, without fail, someone from the old company reached out. Most quietly, some indirectly, a few with resumes. They were watching the same thing we were living. And the reality was clear. What they had inherited was collapsing, not in a dramatic, scandalous way, but in the quiet, steady way incompetence always does. Missed targets, rotating leadership, confused messaging. A company that used to stand for results now stood for rebrands. And yet, I felt no joy in watching it crumble because I had loved that place once. I had poured years into it, but love without respect becomes regret. And regret left unchecked becomes rot, so I chose to keep moving forward. One day at a time, no shortcuts, no borrowed power. Just steady, deliberate work, because the truth is, when you finally stop chasing validation from broken systems, you start building something they can never take back. And that was the real shift. Not the clients, not the revenue, the ownership of time, of purpose, of direction. And no board vote could touch that. It had been almost a year, 12 months since I walked out of the only office I had known for nearly 2 decades. 12 months since I had my title stripped and handed to someone who did not earn it. 12 months since I answered that unexpected phone call that quietly shifted everything. And I will tell you something strange. By month 12, I was not angry anymore. I was building again. By then, we had grown to just under 30 people. Not huge, but all of them sharp, intentional, and aligned. We were lean by design, clear in mission, no wasted effort. We had no office politics, no deadweight meetings, just trust and execution. We were not just winning projects. We were becoming the name companies called when things went sideways. Not for hype, but because we were known to fix things quietly, properly, and without ego. That is when the email came in. Not from the board, not from the CEO, not even through back channels. It came from an independent PR firm, one I remembered from the old company days. They were working with a major publication doing a piece on corporate succession disasters. The firm I used to work for was going to be part of it. They were asking for comment. I stared at the screen for a while before closing the laptop. I knew exactly what had happened. This was not a random journalist fishing for gossip. This was damage control. Someone behind the scenes was trying to manage the narrative. Quietly, carefully, before the story got legs. I said nothing. The next day the board chair called, direct line. He opened carefully. I know we have not spoken directly in a long time, but I wanted to personally reach out before anything surfaces in the press. He was slower this time. Less rehearsed. There is a piece being written. It is not favorable, and it is going to include references to how the leadership transition was handled last year. I let him talk. We are doing our best to clarify the facts, but there is a lot of nuance being lost. I said nothing. Then he pivoted. We would like to offer a formal acknowledgement, an apology, if you would accept it. Not for public consumption, just between us. There it was. I understood exactly what he was doing. They were not offering an apology. They were offering silence. My silence. A quiet arrangement, maybe even the suggestion of a sealed statement, or a side agreement, to keep their mistakes out of the spotlight. I declined. Not with malice, just clearly. I am not interested in rewriting the past. I am interested in building the future. He was not used to people saying no that calmly. He paused. Then he said something I did not expect. The truth is, we thought you would cave. We assumed you would come back when it all started falling apart, I answered simply. I did not spend 18 years building credibility to lend it to chaos. The story came out 2 weeks later. The article was brutal, but fair. It laid out the facts. The rushed transition. The questionable hire. The loss of major clients. The rapid turnover at the senior level. The mounting internal tension. And the sudden, quiet departures of once loyal team members. My name was mentioned just once, in passing. It simply said, the former executive, widely respected across the industry, declined to comment. And that was all it took, because it left people wondering why someone who had once shaped the firm's entire strategic direction would have nothing to say. People can feel authenticity, and they can smell when something does not add up. Suddenly, the phone started ringing more than usual. Not with gossip, with opportunities. Private equity firms asking if we would advise on operational restructuring. Startups seeking long-term partnership, not just pitch decks. Even a few. Offers to acquire us outright, but I had no interest in selling. Not yet. We were not done. Then, something even more unexpected happened. One of the firm's legacy clients, a global supplier we had worked with on and off for over a decade, reached out directly. I knew the name of the executive who called. He had once been skeptical of me. We had butted heads over a regional rollout years ago, but this time his tone was different. He asked if we could meet. No middleman, no procurement teams, just a simple request to sit across a table and talk. We met at a quiet, private restaurant, the kind of place where no one wears a name badge. He was respectful, direct. "Your old firm is failing us," he said plainly. "They missed 2 critical deadlines. The new leadership team is spinning, and no one is accountable. We cannot operate like this anymore." Then he got to the point. "We want to move everything to you." I sat still. "It will not be immediate. We have contracts to untangle. But when the dust settles, we want to work with people who actually show up." And just like that, the account we had once built from scratch, nurtured for years, then lost without explanation, was returning. But this time, on our terms. No board politics, no handoffs, just partnership. It was not revenge. It was restoration. But more than that, it was confirmation. That everything I walked away from was worth it. That every moment of doubt, every day I questioned if I had done the right thing by starting over, was part of the path, because here is the truth no one talks about. When you are removed from something you built, it feels personal. Because it is. You bleed into your work. You care. You fight for it. But sometimes, what looks like a loss is just a redirection. And if you do the work, not just the external rebuild, but the internal one, the return is stronger than anything you left behind. I did not need a seat at that old table anymore. I had built a new one, and people were coming to it. Not because they had nowhere else to go, but because it actually stood for something: integrity, clarity, results. The kind of values people say they care about, but rarely live by. We were living by them. Every day, no headlines, no politics. Just work that mattered. And in a world full of noise, that is what people remember. It was a Tuesday when the message came through. Simple, direct. No subject line, just 5 words. "Can we talk? It's urgent." It came from someone I had not heard from in over a year. Someone who had quietly disappeared into the chaos after the new regime took over. She had been on the finance side, sharp, observant, but never loud. The kind of person who did not play politics but knew how to survive around them. We had worked together often, trusted each other, even if we were never exactly friends. Her name was Lena. I called her the next morning. "No small talk. I would not reach out if this were not serious," she said. "I believe you. What's going on?" She took a long breath. "They are trying to sell the firm." I leaned back in my chair. "It is not public yet, and I doubt they will announce it until they have a deal in motion. But the board is fractured. Half of them are done. The rest are scrambling to clean up the mess without acknowledging they made one. Is that what this is? Damage control?" "No," she said. "This is me trying to stop something worse," she explained. Everything. The CEO's son-in-law had made a series of high-stakes decisions: acquisitions, rebranding, a new internal platform, all expensive, none of them vetted properly. What little goodwill they had left with legacy clients was gone. They, new hires? Most of them had jumped ship within 6 months. And the board? They were not just upset. They were exposed. Several large clients had quietly exited. Cash flow was tight. Morale was non-existent. They were, as she put it, a shell of what we once were. Then she got to the point. "There's a group of us, people you once worked with, people who stayed behind for reasons we are not proud of. We want to rebuild, but we cannot do it under him. And what exactly are you asking? We want you to come back, not to take over, to lead the transition, quietly, strategically, clean up what's left and relaunch it as something better." The board would back it. At least most of them. "We need credibility, and you still have it." I did not answer right away. I thanked her for being honest. Told her I needed time. Then I hung up and sat in silence. For years that firm had been my life. I had grown up professionally in those halls, Every major milestone, every win, every heartbreak, it all happened there. But I had also rebuilt, brick by brick. Not just a company, but a life with clearer boundaries and deeper alignment. Going back, even for the right reasons, felt like walking into a burning building with a bucket of water. So I called someone I trusted, not a colleague, not a client, my brother. He had never been part of the corporate world, worked with his hands, owned a small carpentry business out in the county, and he had a way of saying simple things that hit harder than the smartest strategist. I laid it all out for him. He let me finish, then said, "Sounds like they are asking you to rebuild a house they tore down, using your tools." I laughed. Then he added, "The real question is, are you trying to save them or prove you were right?" That one stuck because the truth is, there was a part of me that wanted to fix it. Not out of loyalty, but to prove a point. That I could steady the ship. That they were wrong to let it slip away. But another part of me knew that was not the right reason, so I slept on it. And the next morning, I wrote Lena back. I told her I appreciated the trust, that I understood the stakes, but I would not be returning. Not because I held a grudge, but because I had already done the hard work of letting go. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for something broken is walk away and build something better, elsewhere. I ended the message with this. If you ever want to talk about building something new, not salvaging something old, I am listening. She replied a few hours later. I figured you would say that, but I had to try. If anything changes, I'll reach out. That was the last I heard from her, at least for a while. But the story did not end there. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. Not an email, an actual envelope. Postmarked from out of state. No return address. Inside, a one-page memo. It was from a client we had both worked with, back in the old days. The letter was brief. I heard what happened. I am moving the rest of the portfolio to your firm. Not because of what you said, but because of what you did not. There was a number at the bottom. A personal line. No assistant, no gatekeeper. I called. And over the next 45 minutes, we talked about everything. The industry, the future, the quiet shift happening beneath the surface. How trust was becoming a rarer currency than capital. And how people were not just looking for services anymore. They were looking for signals. Signals that you stood for something. That you stayed steady when others panicked. That you could be counted on. That single account brought in more annual revenue than 3 of our largest projects combined. But more than the money, it signaled something I had felt but not fully accepted. We had arrived, not loudly, not with press releases or speaking tours, just by showing up, delivering, letting the work speak. And suddenly, we were not the alternative, we were the standard. The truth is, I never set out to build a competitor to the old firm. I just wanted to do the work the right way, with people who cared. But in doing that, day after day, we had become the thing others were measuring themselves against. And while the old firm faded, quietly absorbed by a conglomerate 6 months, later we kept building. No spotlight, no drama, just progress, because some things are not meant to be reclaimed. They are meant to be outgrown. And once you accept that, really accept it, the path forward becomes clearer than it has ever been. The offer came quietly. No announcement, no fanfare. Just a folder delivered by courier, addressed directly to me. Inside was a letter of intent, a proposal from a mid-sized investment group that had been circling our industry for the last couple of years. They wanted to buy us out. Full acquisition. A clean sweep with promises of strategic autonomy and founder-level oversight. All the usual phrases they use when they do not want to scare you off. I had seen this playbook before. But, this time, I was not reading it from the outside. I was the target. We were no longer the underdog. We were profitable, efficient, and respected. Word had gotten around about how we handled transitions, how we treated clients, how we retained talent without bribery or bravado. People noticed, and investors especially noticed. The number on the offer was real, a figure that would let everyone on the team walk away comfortable. I could retire early, start something new, or do nothing for a while, something I had never really allowed myself to do. I stared at the folder for a long time. Then I made a few calls. We were still small enough to sit around one table. 12 of us, a mix of former colleagues and people I had brought in after the rebuild. I told them the truth. No sugar-coating. I was approached, I said. They want the company, all of it. The number is solid. The paperwork is clean, but the decision is not mine alone. One of the newer team members, a guy with a sharp eye for data and an even sharper sense of people, leaned forward. Do they want what we built, or just what it looks like from the outside? That hit hard, because I knew what he meant. On paper, we were a safe bet. Low overhead, consistent returns, loyal clients. But what we had was not just about performance. It was about values. The quiet kind you cannot fake in a brochure. The way we solved problems without panic. The way we talked to people, not over them. The way we kept promises, even when no one was watching. If they took over, none of that would survive the transition. They would say the right things at first. Keep the brand, retain the staff, maybe even leave me in a figurehead role. But eventually, the culture would bend, then break. Slowly, quietly. Until what was left was just another polished version of what we had walked away from. I gave the team a few days, told them to think about what they wanted. Not just now, but 5 years from now. Then I sat with it, myself, not the money, not the prestige, the legacy. Not the kind that goes on plaques. The kind that shows up in the way people carry themselves after working with you. The kind that builds habits, and maybe even hope, in places where burnout had taken root. And the truth was, I had something better than an exit. I had alignment, a business that reflected the people inside it, clients who came because of trust, not just rates, a team that worked late not because they were scared, but because they cared. That was rare, and it was not for sale. So I declined the offer. Politely, respectfully, firmly. The response came back within hours, a revised offer. More money, fewer restrictions, then a call. We can make this work. What would it take? I told them nothing. Nothing they could give me, because what we had built was not transactional. It was intentional. And if that made us harder to buy, so be it. The months that followed were the most focused we had ever been. Something shifted after that moment. Not just in me, in all of us. The decision had clarified everything. There was no ambiguity about why we were here. No second-guessing. Just forward motion. We started turning down clients that did not align with how we operated. Not out of arrogance. Out of clarity. We doubled down on mentoring the next generation, not because it was trendy, because it mattered. And quietly, almost invisibly, our work started changing things. Other firms took notice. Some imitated. A few reached out asking how we did it. And every now and then, someone from the old days would check in. Not with bitterness, but with curiosity. One day I got an email from someone I had not heard from in a decade. A former junior associate who had been in the room for a few of our most difficult early projects. He was running his own company now. Lean team. Modest size. But the tone of the message struck me. I remember the way you handled that client. Blow up in 17, he wrote. The way you told the truth, even when it cost us the contract. I built my entire business on that principle. We're not big, but we sleep well. I read that line twice. We sleep well. That is the part no one tells you about. Success is not just about the money or the growth or the recognition. It is about being able to sleep well at night, to know that the choices you made did not compromise who you are. 18 years at the old firm taught me what to do. The collapse that followed taught me what not to do. And everything after that, the silence, the rebuilding, the second chance, taught me why it all mattered. Because when you get the call and the offer, and the chance to cash out, the only thing that keeps you grounded is whether or not the foundation you built can stand without you. Ours could. And it did. But I stayed anyway. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. Because I believed in what we were building. And in the people building it with me. That, in the end, is the difference between a job and a legacy. And I finally understood. They did not replace me. They freed me. And in doing so, they handed me something more valuable than any title, a second chance, to build something honest. And this time, I would not waste a single part of it.